Very good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining with us. We have Mr. Prasanna with us. Man, very good evening, man.
Very good evening, SOORIYAOLI.
Thank you so much, man. And probably I have given you very less time for this particular webinar to be taken up. Thank you so much for accepting it. And you can start up the session from now on, man, please.
My pleasure. Good evening, everyone. Thanks to the organizers, Easy and my good friend SOORIYAOLI for having this session on a very important topic, which is the need of the hour, the impact of English language on employment in the present day scenario. And I appreciate all participants for being here. I hope you will enjoy this session. There's going to be a question and answer session at the end of the session. So you can make note of any questions that you may have to clarify, and you can post them or ask at the end of the session. So, Oli, shall we begin?
Yes, man. You
Or do I have to wait for a few more?
No. We can go on
minutes?
starting. We can go.
All right. So, as you all know, the topic for today's session is impact of English language on employment. I have a few extracts taken from leading journals and publications here on the screen. So, we begin with the English language is spoken at some level by more than 1.75 billion people worldwide, roughly a quarter of the world's population. Now, this was in 2012, but now it is more than 2.3 billion people worldwide. The same Harvard Business Review has mentioned in its recent publication that it is more than 2.3 billion people worldwide, which is more than a quarter of the world's population. And an estimated 85% of international organizations use English as one of their working languages. So when I say working languages, it is different from official language. Like in India, we have multiple languages, but then English is an official language, which is considered to be a language that is spoken by the government, the public, people who do business in India. So that is what is meant by working languages. And over 80% of academic journals are written entirely in English. And most of you all here would agree to this fact that it is more than 80% of academic journals are written entirely in English, because the language of internet and publication is only English. So with this brief quotes, I move on to what we are going to look at in this session today. Today's session is going to focus more on statistics, more on facts and figures, in terms of how important are language skills, in business, how important are language skills for students, for employers, and for employees. And then the most important of all the English language skills, like we have reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Out of these four, which skills are considered the most important skills by a majority of the organizations by doing business across. And we'll also be touching upon the employer's English language expectations. And finally, a few points on the benefits for employees who are proficient in language. This is kind of an outline for the entire session, and I wish we have taken actually a lot of effort in getting all this information from reliable sources, and based on information and document that we have from our end. Now, today's session is going to focus a lot on a survey that was taken in 2016, and I would want to mention that this survey was the first of its kind in the world. You would have known of surveys, you would have seen reports of surveys that were taken country wise, but this is the first global survey that was conducted by Cambridge Assessment English and QS. QS is quadruply Simons. So I'm not going to go deep into what these are. QS is one of the organizations that does this university rankings across the globe. It also does some surveys on professional development for college students. And in association with Cambridge Assessment English, it has done a survey on English at work. That was a global analysis of language skills in business environments across the world. So the findings were pretty alarming. The first point here is 98.5% of the businesses or of employers, they have at least one method of assessing English language competency when they recruit people. So which means it could either be a face-to-face interview or a language communication test, or a test in forms of pen and paper based, or an online test, or an oral interview, or a telephone interview, or a face-to-face interview. So by and large, 98.5% of business organizations have at least one method of assessing English language competency. This depicts that companies, businesses want candidates to be proficient in English. And the second point here is across all company sizes. So when I say all company sizes, it starts from small to medium, medium to large, large to big. People with less than 50 employees, people with more than 50 employees, people with more than 100 employees, more than 1,000 employees. That's the category that we are talking about. Across all company sizes, there is at least 40% skills gap. Now, if I have to go deep into what the skills gap means, it is what language proficiency is expected by the company versus what language proficiency the candidates or the employees have. So across all of these company sizes, there is at least 40% of skills gap. What we see here is what the employer said from different countries and territories regarding is English a significant aspect in their business. Because you all know, as I told, English is important for over 95% of employers in many countries and territories, where English is not an official language. That is the very important point that should be noted here. English is important for over 95% of employers in many countries where English is not an official language. So I have some examples of these countries where English is not an official language, like Belgium, Germany, Italy, Portugal, Switzerland, Malaysia, Singapore. These places, these countries and territories, least likely to say that English is important. But in countries like Latin American countries like Brazil, Chile, Venezuela, these are countries or territories that's likely to say English is very important. In addition, We also have this Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, all featured toward the low end of this list.
அப்படியா?
They feel that English
Okay,
is not so
okay.
important. But by and large, if you look at the graph that is displayed here on the screen, you would definitely understand how businesses consider English to be
ஆமா,
very
ஆமா.
important for their business.
ஆ,
But there are also
ஆமா,
other
ஆமா.
BRIC countries like
இன்னொரு
Brazil,
பார்த்தீங்கன்னா
Russia,
portfolio
China
பார்த்தீங்களா?
are all among the countries and territories that
Portfolio
least likely to say that English is
button click
important.
பண்ணும்போது
Although these countries and
ஸோ
territories
இப்போ
feature
services அதே
towards
மாதிரி
the
மாத்திரவா?
low end of the list,
Services அதே
at
மாதிரி
least
மாத்திரவா?
50% of all employers, except for Chile, they still say that English is
எல்லாத்தையுமே
important
இங்கிலீஷ்ல
for their
சொல்லி போடுங்க.
organization.
நம்ம அது போட்டு
Now, we have
portfolio நான்
India
மாத்துவேன்.
somewhere in the middle.
இருந்தாலும் உங்களுக்கு
India is different from other big countries. Because it is over 85% of employees say that English language skills are important for their organizations. So this result may reflect India's historical connections to English-speaking countries. And today, English is an official language in India. But although it is not widely spoken throughout the country, it can be a first language or a second language or a third language in many parts of the country. And there is one more reason why India focuses a lot on communication here in this list, especially because teaching English to primary children has been a controversial matter in terms of pedagogical teaching. If there are any teachers here in this webinar, you would understand the way English was taught to children decades ago is now seen a paradigm shift. Or if you can just go back to your own pre-primary or primary classes, the way we learned English is completely different from the way students learn English at schools now. In fact, teachers themselves did not know. I'm talking about teachers who taught us. Teachers themselves did not know the right way to teach language to us. To be specific, we were introduced to English language by way of the letters of the English. Most of you would agree to it. But the paradigm shift in terms of pedagogical teaching of the English language now is students are taught the sounds, not the scripts. Students learn the phonemes, the sounds involved in the letters of any language, and definitely not the scripts. Scripts are meant to recognize. Sounds are meant to be learned when we learn any language. So that's the difference between how we learned English and how students in schools learn now. Because of this reason, the present day scenario, students have actually not got into jobs. People who are learning in schools now have actually not got into jobs. So it is because of this reason that English is considered to be a very significant aspect in countries like ours, where businesses is dealt in the language English. Now, let's look at the industry comparison. Different industries that use English as their primary means of communication. Now, in countries and territories where English is not an official language, the industry is least likely to say that English is important. Is like construction or property or recruitment or HR services. Now, you have the industry like law, transportation distribution, travel, leisure and hospitality, metals and mining, utilities, media, entertainment, arts, and FMCG, along with construction and property. These are 100% of industries where English-speaking countries and countries or territories where this is an official language or a de facto official language. It's a de facto official language. It could possibly be a native language or a language or a country that has adapted English as an official language. They want 100% English language proficiency for these things. When in terms of aerospace, defense, or energy, or other countries, the countries that you can see in the purple color, they kind of show less importance to that language. The reason being, communication has to be complete and has to be at the highest end for several industries. But by and large, if you look at this graph, it shows both countries where English is an official language or English not an official language, they do give importance to English language as a primary aspect for doing business. Now, let's move on to the next one on the size of the companies. We have micro businesses, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, mid-large sized businesses, enterprise businesses with more than 1,000 to 2,500 employees, and then large enterprises. So in almost all of these places, irrespective of the size of the business, or the size of the organization, countries and territories where English is not an official language are most likely to say that English is important. However, the surprisingly little variation with other countries. English is important to at least 2/3 of all employers across all organization sizes. That is what the key statement that we can see from this graph. So moving on, the most important part of this entire session is on the skills. So findings by language status, according to the survey that was conducted, out of the 4 skills, the most important skills were reading and speaking. And the most important skill for employers in these countries where English is not an official language is reading. But for English-speaking countries, where English is an official language, it was speaking. The reason is a country like India, where the literacy rate is not as much of an English language native speakers country. Reading is very important in any business. And in the other slides that we are about to see, we are going to see the classification of employee groups who use high level of proficiency in English. So the point here is, in a country like India, where literacy rate is comparatively lesser than any other native English-speaking countries, the businesses and organizations focus a lot on reading, whereas speaking is not given that much of an importance to reading, mainly because these organizations in India expect only the top management or the mid-level or the top-level management to have oral communication with customers and other business partners across the world. Whereas the majority of the Indian working population rely more on emails and reports. So that is the reason why reading is considered as the most important skill here. Listening and writing has also got due importance depending on businesses. Say, for example, a business processing unit with a voice process focuses a lot on listening skills and speaking skills than writing. Whereas businesses that focus on research writing, editorial, journalism, they give a lot of importance in they give a lot of importance on writing. So, with this idea in mind of all the four skills and the due weightage given in different countries, we move on to the next one, which is the language comparison, skill comparison in terms of Indian businesses. Now, what do employees what do employers think is the most important language skill? So we have two different bar graphs here for each of the skill. The first one, the dark blue bar, is representing India, and the purple represents the global average. If you look at this, globally, it is 14% of employers or companies that focus on listening as an important skill, whereas in India, we give a lot of importance than the global average. As I already said, reading is given a lot of importance in India, with 40% of businesses considering reading skill very important over other skills when compared to 38% globally. And India also focuses on 30% of the speaking skills, whereas globally it is 35%, because businesses and organizations across the world has got a higher average than India. The reason being, as I said, we give a lot of focus on reading than in speaking. And finally, the writing skill in India's average is 14%, whereas the global average is 12%. Okay, now this graph gives different tasks that are required by employers to work at their businesses. As you can see, what level of English do employers require for tasks at work? So when we focus on English as a key component in doing business, we also have to be very clear on different types of tasks that the employers will expect from an employee. So the 40% in the previous slide that we saw in India is like this: writing emails and letters. India focuses a lot, about 64% of it in that. So these are the different types of tasks that are required by organizations across from employees. They write emails and letters, they receive and respond to emails and letters, and then delivering presentations, then participating in meetings. It could be an online meeting or a face-to-face meeting, and then reading reports. Now, out of these are the four main tasks that any employee is expected to do when they join an organization. And the level of competency is also mentioned here in these things. Is the Majanta says advanced to a native level is a kind of competency required for writing emails and letters. Whereas in India, it is only 64% of organizations that require employees to do such kind of tasks. If you look at all of these tasks that are mentioned on the graph, you would always find that India tops the list against the global average, because the kind of manpower or the soft power that we have here is enormous and a well-educated manpower compared to other developing countries. The proficiency level or the competency level in doing any of these tasks is high with Indian population than the global average. Is the slide displayed, Uli? I'm not able to see it is blank. Okay, now I got it. Now, the employers' English language requirements is what we're going to see now. There's a wide range of English requirements in countries where English is not an official language. It is 7% of job tasks, like what we have discussed, writing or replying to emails and letters, making presentations, delivering presentations, doing meetings, and with all of those kinds of tasks, or reading emails, or reading reports, or responding to reports, with all of these types of tasks, it requires a native level of English. Again, the 49% requiring advanced English, and then 31% requiring intermediate English. These facts and figures could possibly be confusing when you look at the graphs for the first time. But the point that is to be considered or noted is English is definitely the most important aspect for any business communication across. So, in even English-speaking countries, the majority of the employees require a native level of English, or an advanced level, or a proficient level. But in other countries where it is not an official language, most employers tend to require either an advanced or intermediate level. So in businesses like media, entertainment, or arts, or law, or financial services, or banking, or a fifth of all jobs require native level of English. But it is worth noting that these industries receive a higher proportion of responses from employers located in English-speaking countries where English is an official language. But in other industries like construction, or property, or FMCG, or recruitment, or HR services, or distribution, or logistics, or transportation, here in these cases they receive a high proportion of responses where employees located in other countries, they are expected to have at least a basic or an intermediate level of language proficiency. Now, these industries were more likely to require a mixture of both. It could be advanced level, or it could be an intermediate level. So because of that, there's a gap in the English language skills. So the biggest skills gaps are found in a variety of industries. Now, the internal facing roles. Now, there's a difference between internal facing roles and an external facing role. Internal facing roles do not interact with customers across. They do not have any kind of a communication with clients or customers. Rather, they interact only within the organization, within employers working in an organization. So this internal facing roles such as HR or personal, HR and personal, accounting, finance, production and logistics. So these places, there is a big skills gap found. And external facing roles such as marketing, sales and customer service. Because if you look at these roles, marketing, sales or customer service, they are the people who represent the organization to their clients or customers, which means they are supposed to demonstrate a higher level of language proficiency in order to communicate better. So internal facing roles have bigger skill gap, whereas the external facing roles have smaller skills gap. Now, on the other end, if you look at the countries and territories where English is not an official language, some of the highest skills gap were found in China, Japan, Russia, and South Korea. And the lowest skills gaps are in the middle and top level management because, as I told you already, in a country like ours, in a country like India, we expect only the middle and top level management to interact with customers and clients and do not let everyone else in the organization to interact or have communication with customers and clients. So the skills gap was kind of very low in the middle and top level management, where there is only about 25% of skills gap. Whereas if you look at the overall skills gap, it is about 40% across organizations that we have seen in the first few slides. Okay, now this graph shows no skills gap and skills gap in countries where English is an official language or English is not an official language but a de facto official language, or in English speaking countries. The point to be highlighted here is the first one, where English is not an official language. Let us not be worried about countries where English is an official language or a native language. The first one here in this pink and purple, pink band is no skills gap was found only in 15% of organizations, whereas skills gap was found in more than 67% of the organizations. This reflects that employers hire employees or candidates who do not have the adequate language proficiency to do business or to work in a business environment, which is quite alarming in a country like ours, where we do business across the globe, and into every single industry. But at the same time, if you look at the third one, where the skills, there is no skills gap in about 66% of organizations, and the skills gap was only 22%. So these are the places where English is a native language, or it is an English speaking country like US or Australia or Canada. The overall idea of this page that we see here, the graph that we see here, is whether or not a country is an English speaking country or not an English speaking country, English language skills gap exists across, irrespective of the language they speak. We move on to the percentage of employers that offer better package. So this is one of the other important points that I wanted to make. Why is everybody so focused on improving communication skills? Why are educational institutions begging students to improve their communication skills or language proficiency? Or why are placement officers and college managements insist students to be proficient in communication? Students generally do not understand the fact that with just technical skills or subject knowledge, it is quite difficult to get a better package or a better job. When we compare two different sets of students, one set of students with best technical skills or subject knowledge, the other set of students with a mediocre technical skills or subject knowledge, but with proficiency in English language, who do you think will get a better package? It is always the other set of students with not so good or proficient in technical knowledge and those who are good at communication skills or language proficiency. It is primarily because the world is filled with graduates. I don't mean to use the word educated and proficient graduates. It is the world is filled with graduates. Graduates can be defined as students who pass out of a college with a degree certificate, irrespective of the marks or the skill set they possess. But businesses and organizations across the world do not want graduates to join them. They want employees. Any company wants employees to join them and not just graduates. So an employee can be defined as someone who has subject knowledge, who has some set of skills, and who is also proficient in a language that is used for business or doing communication in their businesses. So the reason why educational institutions focus a lot on English language proficiency is for the fact that businesses and organizations offer better packages to applicants with good English skills. Let us all think for a moment. We have been, students at the graduate level or postgraduate level have been learning English, have been using English for approximately around 12 years to 14 years. But they still fumble during an interview. A majority of the students commit mistakes when speaking or writing or when they read something. A person who has been exposed to a specific language for over 12 years or 14 years should be proficient, but we are still not proficient in spite of using the language, learning the language for more than a decade. There are multiple reasons for it. It could be a social reason, it could be a personal reason, it could also be a reason that is related to education, geography. So it is exactly for the same reason why companies eliminate a lot of students on their English language proficiency. So there are certain skills that students can learn over a period of time after joining employment, and HRs in most organizations are well aware of it. However, aspiring candidates who want to work, who want to join a big company, or who want to join a startup, who want to do big in their business, who want to choose that job as a career. So these aspiring candidates will have to be definitely proficient in English language skills. At the same time, many organizations do not employ language proficient HR. So the reason is we have been working with different educational institutions across the country, and by and large, most of these institutions do complain that HR executives who visit an educational institution for placement recruitments are not proficient in the language, because of which some deserving candidates don't get the right job. So businesses have also kind of understood why language proficiency is really very important on both sides, both from the HR side and from the students' end. So the graph that we see now is the percentage of employers that offer better packages to people with good English skills. In countries where English is not an official language, about 57% of businesses and organizations do offer better package. Now, in the forthcoming slides, I'm going to give you, or I'm going to elaborate on what it actually means by better package. And in countries and territories where English is a native language or it is an English-speaking country, it is 25% of these organizations offer better package. So this is going to be quite interesting. What we actually mean by better package? There are these three main important features. One is faster progression. Second is increase in salary or higher salary. And the third is more senior roles or promotion. So there's a distinction between faster progression and promotion. Promotion is within an organization, whereas faster progression is out of the organization where an employee works at the moment. So if you look at this, it is faster progression that is the benefit, that is the most important benefit of employees who get a better package from a company or from a business. About 50% of employers feel that English language skills help any professional progress faster in their job or career. Whereas almost the same, it is 49% of employers feel that language proficiency offers better package than others. And within organizations, it is only about 29% of employees, that 21, right? Sorry, 21% of employees that are offered senior roles or promoted for their language proficiency. I'm sure this was quite interesting. Sorry. With that, I move on to the closure of this. Are you all able to see the screen now? Yes, now I got it. So, in the long term, changing technology or demographics could influence the demand for English. But in short term or a medium term, businesses and organization demand for English is predicted to continue growing. There's definitely not going to be a stop in the expectations of companies or businesses. The sheer size of the English language skills gap is surprising. We have seen that almost 40% of 40% of employers do have skills gap within an organization. Has been it is being an international language for some time. We still have about 40% of skills gap. So this strongly indicates how prevalent English requirements have become. It could be in any organization, it could be in any industry, in all functions, and at all management levels. So English skill has, these skills have never been more essential to succeed and progress at work than now. So how is this going to be dealt with? Is $1 million question. I'm going to give you a few more facts here. The hierarchy. What percentage of staff have the English skills needed to succeed in their role? Now we have two different comparisons here. I have picked specifically India and compared it with the global average. Here, top level management in India has got about 91% of skill set. Globally, it is only 78. So we are doing comparatively better than the global average. In terms of marketing, people who are into marketing, we have about 84% with good language skills, whereas 74% is the global average. For accounts and finance, we have 74, we are still doing better. In sales, we are 84, we are still above average than the global one, which is 70. But if you come here at human resource or personnel or um, logistics and distribution, the global and India average are almost the same. There's not much of a difference between these because of the fact that these are interfacing roles. These are not outer facing roles or external facing roles. These are internal facing roles. But in terms of protection and customer services, we are kind of doing really well when compared to the global average. We are about 82% in protection, and in customer service, we are about 84%, which shows that our people are more qualified than the global average. Now, this is pretty interesting. This graph shows how many percent of employers are planning to improve the English skills of their employees. Most all of these branches, top management or marketing, accounts and finance, sales, HR, production, customer service, logistics, India tops the chart. It still feels that all of these people should improve their language proficiency. And they're not kind of quite happy with what they possess now. Irrespective of the hierarchy across departments, these are the companies that still feel in India that employees should have still more proficiency in language. So it is across all job roles, English skills for their employees. So the focus of this improvement was mainly seen for top and middle level roles. Moving on, we have what English language evaluation methods do employers use when they recruit people. Is the screen visible to all? Surya, I'm not able to move to the next slide. Would you please help me? Because there is
just a minute. Just a minute.
Only?
Man, I'm there. I'm there. Just a minute.
Yeah, I think there was some connectivity issue. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Oli, are you able to see the screen now?
Yes, man, perfectly.
Can you please respond on the chat box? Yes. Okay. Right. Now, this page that we see here is the different evaluation methods that companies use when recruiting new staff. Now, if you look at this, doing more than one check to ensure an employee's proficiency in a range of English language skills is seen as a very important factor at the time of recruitment. Almost all employers surveyed have at least one method of assessing language competency, along with the most common technique of interview in English. Over 25% of these people use a test that they have created on their own or a test that is available for recruitment. They do face-to-face interviews. They do it externally or internally, and then they also acknowledge some international English language certificates, which is kind of quite high now. We have multiple certificates offered by different universities across the world to demonstrate an individual's English language skills. Say, for example, IELTS, TOEFL exams. There is an examination for the healthcare professionals, which was introduced a few years ago by the Box Hill University in Australia and in association with Cambridge, which is called the Occupational English Test for Healthcare Professionals. So doctors, nurses, dentists, these people take up these English language assessment called Occupational English Test to demonstrate their language proficiency connected to their industry. There is an examination for legal professionals. There is an English language test for aviation professionals. So something of this kind. There are multiple levels of language proficiency examinations available which these companies use. So by and large, interview is considered to be a face-to-face interview is considered to be the most widely used method of evaluation in terms of language proficiency in any organization. So, with all these facts and figures that we have shared now, what is next? We have language proficiency. We have specialized English language courses for schools, engineers, doctors, for almost any kind of industry. There is a specialized course on English language for those set of people, which you can see it on this slide. But here is an important question to all of you. How would you say English as? Is English a language or a subject or a lesson or a skill? The reason why we are still not proficient in the language is primarily because we have learned language as a we have learned English as a language or as a subject or a lesson, but it is to be learned and taught as a skill, which is very important. And primarily, that is the reason why we are unable to communicate better, why students, after having language classes for over 12 to 14 years, are still unable to communicate proficiently in English language. So, with that, I would like to come to the end of the session. English is the language of international business. So, increasingly, it is just as important for businesses in native or non-native English-speaking countries. And here, over about 95 countries and territories use English and consider English as an important aspect. Uh, I would like to share just a thought about a recent article that I read. This intelligent quotient and emotional quotient are good, but it is still not enough. There's something called an adaptability quotient which is required. So being adaptable is be curious, to be unique, and to be able to adapt ourselves in any kind of a situation. It is no longer survival of the fittest, but it is survival of the quickest, which is what Don Senai said in a very recent interview, which I read, which was very interesting. Now, to be adaptable is only when we are capable of communicating better. People still crib that they are unemployed, there are no proper employment opportunities available, but you can actually understand that opportunities are in abundance. Some are obvious, some are not obvious. What we lacked is the skill set and capabilities. So it is only when we learn English as a skill and not as language or a subject, only then we can try and increase employment opportunities or progression in the current employment. So with that, I would like to conclude this session and leave open the session for any questions if you have. Thank you very much. You can post in your questions on the chat box if you have, or unmute your mics and then ask your questions. We have a question from a participant. Will Cambridge English certificates like tech be considered during interview? Yes, Ms. Lena, these certificates will definitely be considered at the time of interview. The reason is a person who has a BEC certificate or any Cambridge English certificate is considered to be exposed to the business communication that a company or a business will have. So these certificates do have weightage and are accepted by companies in the majority of institutions and organizations. Since there is no much of variety English for teachers, business English, there's Dr. Jayashree Agarwal with a question, but Dr. Jayashree Agarwal, would you want to unmute your mic and then ask that question to me, as I'm unable to comprehend what your question actually is? Even after, why students do not realize the importance of students? Okay, we have an interesting question from Mr. S. Gidaraghavan here. So, even after all of these things, why do students don't realize the importance of English? Okay, the response to this is kind of interesting, because there are students who have learned English only for the sake of examinations or for marks, and they have not learned the language as a skill, as I already mentioned during the session. So it is the responsibility of every teacher to make the language classes interesting and not so boring. Number one, being a trainer, we face a lot of these questions from schools and colleges. So it is a teacher's responsibility to ensure that students understand that English is not just a language or a subject, it is a skill. Just like how we learn driving or swimming or writing, English is also to be learned and taught as a skill. So that was a good question. What will be the basic step for fluent speaking? We have a question from a participant. There are only 3 ways you can improve your speaking skills: practice, practice, practice. You will have to continue to speak in English in order to improve your fluency. But I would also want to clarify one important doubt here. What do you actually mean by fluency? Fluency is not the speed in which a person speaks a language. Rather, fluency is the way an individual speaks so that the listener understands it or comprehends it completely. That is what is fluency. So please do not be um, taken away by these words like fluency in speaking. When somebody speaks too fast, you don't mean to say that the person is fluent. What is the point in somebody speaking too fast when the listener is unable to understand? I hope I have answered that question. What would you recommend for children who come from very remote places and still require a lot of help? That is a question from Dr. S. Jayashree Agarwal. Um, there are out of these four skills, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, these four skills can be classified into two larger groups: the productive skills and the receptive skills. So, for any individual who want to be good at writing and speaking, which are considered to be productive skills, it is always important to understand they should be good at their receptive skills. So anyone who wants to improve overall communication should read a lot and listen a lot. Many spoken English classes dissuade people by giving them some templated statements and structures, which I would personally not go with. Focus on a lot of reading and listening skills for your students or for any individual. Automatically, there is going to be a visible difference in the way these people write or speak. So when we read and listen to English text a lot, our mind or the vocabulary pool or is going to be filled. When the vocabulary pool in our mind is filled, then our productive skills like writing and speaking will become easier. So that's what I would definitely recommend. Please try and recommend teaching, reading to your students or children if they want to improve their communication skills. We have a few more questions. I'm not sure. Oli, would you want me to continue?
And please, you can go ahead. You can go ahead, please.
Most of the people say within 1 month fluent English communication skills just for 5,000 or even. Okay, now Mr. Mohammed Imran, that's the point that I was about that was discussing. All these spoken English classes attract students for 5,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees in 1 month. They can speak well and all of that. I'm really not for it. I wouldn't advocate anyone joining a spoken English class to improve their language communication. Please read and listen in order to be fluent in any language that you want to speak. There's no point in attending classes. Attending classes will only give you an opportunity to see something, to interact. Unless and until you read and listen, it is not possible for you to be fluent or be good at communication. So you can join a spoken English class, but please ask your trainers to give you a lot of reading and listening inputs. How do you face the other country English language? There's a question from Mr. Arul Prasad. I'm not able to comprehend your question. How do you face the other country English language? Okay, I think you're asking about the accent. Accent has got nothing to do with any language. It all comes in practice. And you don't have to necessarily follow a specific accent or a specific country's accent. As long as you are able to understand what I'm speaking, it is fine. Or as long as I am able to understand what you speak, it is fine. Unless and until specific kinds of job require specific accents of different countries. So, to begin with, we don't really need to worry on any accent. Swati Agarwal, how to develop confidence in speaking? You will have to practice. It is like learning to swim. You can watch a video on how to swim. You can read a book tutorial on how to swim. But unless and until you get into the water and start swimming, you will never learn swimming. Right? Something like that. There's no point in just reading and reading and reading unless we practice speaking. It has to be an integrated language training program, whichever you join. It has to focus on all the 4 skills. Okay, Dr. Jayashree Agarwal has a question. I was trying to ask what sort of special training could be provided for children from not very privileged background. Out. Okay, now we have faced a lot of situations like this. A student may be studying in class 10, but his or her English language proficiency will be at a class 2 or class 3 level. So what we try and do is, if we have to improve their language speaking, language proficiency, then we start from the level that their proficiency is at. Irrespective of the grade or age these students are, you give them a reading content, you give them a reading topic or a book at a second standard level or a third standard level which they are able to understand. Movies is one best way to make these people understand. There's a technique called using movies to teach English. So when I say movies, it's not really the Bollywood movies. It could also be a cartoon. It could be a Tom and Jerry, or it could be this Donald Duck, or it could be any children's cartoon that has got very simple sentences. And there are some cartoons that you can play with subtitles, without subtitles, and then gradually you can mute them and ask the students to do some kind of a role play. So multiple such techniques that you can use to improve children who are not so privileged, who come from rural areas and all of that. Okay. I think I've almost answered all of the questions that were posted. If you still have any questions, I would request you to please mail to the organizers or do contact me personally in the email that you are seeing on the screen now, prasanna@ltech.in, or you can always contact Easy website. They have a live chat available for all visitors. So you can post your questions there, which will be forwarded to me for my response, and I will be in touch with you. It was really a wonderful session. Thank you very much for patiently listening to me. I hope this was useful to all of you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, man. Probably
to Sooriyoli.
That was a very short time that I gave you, and it was a very useful session for everyone also. And thank you so much for probably answering all the questions very patiently. And it is your time. Probably you can take time in answering the questions for each and every question that they have been asking you. And regards to any more questions, people, if you have any questions, you can just ping me out, or you can just directly ping to Mr. Prasanna here. His mail ID it is visible here. And thank you so much for joining with us today. Also, we'll have one more session tomorrow evening by 5 o'clock. Until then, thank you, bye, and good night. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for probably answering the questions very patiently. Thank you so much, people. And it was a very great and inspiring session by Mr. Prasanna. And probably if you have any questions, people, you can just look out for the email ID here.
Not able to hear Sooriyoli.
Am I audible?
I think there is some connectivity issue.
Am I audible? Hello? Okay, I guess I'm audible, man. Not an issue. So you can just directly write to Mr. Prasanna also. His mail ID is here, prasanna@ltech.in, or you can just write to us also. It is info@easel.net or sooriyoli@easel.in. Probably many of you might be knowing my email ID, or you can just log into the Easel website and you can go on with the public chat, the live chat as well. Thank you so much, people. We'll meet in another webinar tomorrow evening. We'll meet in another webinar tomorrow evening, 5 o'clock. Until then, bye and good night.